So apparently I have some sort of knack for finding weird and strange bikes. The first mountain bike that I had was actually made by a BMX company. The next bike that I had was a Vetus. They're kind of well known globally. They're sold by Chain Reaction Cycles, but as long as I owned the bike, I never saw another person with a Vetus bike. My current bike is a Marin Rift Zone, so that's pretty well known. It's sold at bike shops, sold all over the place online. But this bike is perhaps the strangest of all. This is a Centurion Backfire. And I've done some research on this bike, and it is a German brand. There's not a ton of information on the internet about it. I've never even heard of this brand before, so that says something. I'm kind of a self-proclaimed bikeophile, but Centurion, never heard of them. So this bike is not even actually mine. I'm going to be fixing some things up on it and storing it for a friend. He's an old skateboarding buddy. He got it from somebody that he worked with who used to buy and sell bikes. But anyway, he was interested in mountain biking, so he got this from that guy, but he doesn't have a way to transport it, so it's going to basically stay with me, and then if I go meet him at the trails, I'll just bring it along with me. So let's take a look at some of the components and things on this bike. The first thing are the handlebars. They're pretty narrow, and you would kind of expect that from a bike of this age. I think this is probably like early 2000s or something like that. So really narrow bars, really long stem. When you ride this thing, you feel like you're over it, kind of like a road bike. It's really strange, especially with all the bikes now that are, really short stems, wide bars. You're kind of sitting behind it instead of on top of it so much. But anyway, I have a plan for that. So in terms of the brake, there are two brake levers, but the rear one is connected to nothing back here, so I will address that. The front one is interesting. So it's a hydraulic rim brake. I don't know if it's caliper brake, V brake. I'm not really sure what the difference is between those types of things, but I've adjusted it and it bites pretty well. Moving down from there, tires. So whoever had this before put on these, I don't know what you call them, kind of crossover road tires. They're pretty narrow. They're not going to be any good for mountain biking at all, but I've got something for that as well. So moving on to the drivetrain, pretty much everything is Shimano here. This is Shimano Deore LX, I guess that's what that says. Shimano cranks. We got a Shimano Deore rear derailleur. I think it's 3x8 or 9. Again, what you would expect from this era of bike, but the fact that it has Deore components on it, that's pretty nice. The shifting is kind of sticky back here. I'm not sure if it needs some cable adjustment. Maybe the cable's too tight within the housing because it's just sat too long, or I'm not really sure, but I'll take a look at that too. So some of the things that I have right off the bat to update this are over here. So handlebars, I've got these bars from my first mountain bike. And I think they're like 680 millimeters wide or something like that. They're not super wide, but they're definitely wider compared to what's on this. So that'll be a nice improvement. Got a shorter stem too. I'm pretty sure this is 70 millimeter, which by today's standards is kind of long, but compared to this thing, it's like a solid inch shorter. So that's going to be an improvement. This has got to be like 90 or 100 millimeters long. It's crazy. To take care of those road tires, I've got an old set of Maxxis, what are these things? Moto something? Moto Raptor? I don't know, they're really old. I got them for free from this dude on a Facebook group locally here, so if you're watching this, thanks man, I really appreciate that. He had no use for them. They've sat for a long time. They've got this kind of white stuff that rubber gets when it just gets kind of old, but they still feel pretty pliable. There's not any like cracks in them or anything, so I think that'll be good. I'm a little concerned with the front fitting. It's a 2.5. These are 26-inch wheels, obviously because of the era of this bike, but we'll see if it fits. It's actually kind of hard with this rim brake getting this front wheel off with these narrow tires on it, so I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'll give it a shot. A couple of the other things that I forgot to mention too. So this is a Rockshox Fc fork. So I don't think it's an air fork, but it does have like a rebound adjustment on it, which is kind of cool. So you don't get that pogo stick spring back effect coming at you. The hubs are Deore XT hubs. They both spin really nice and free. And then the other thing are the grips on it, which are actually pretty decent too. They're a little worn down, but they're lock-ons. They work differently than the clamp lock-on style that we have now. It looks like just a screw that goes in and presses up against the handlebars and holds them in place, but it works. They're grippy, they're not moving. So let's start working. Alright, so getting off these road style tires was actually a huge pain. I don't have tire levers. I've never had a need for them with mountain bike tires. I can always just get them off and mount them with my hands pretty easily. But that was not the case with these. I just had to use a screwdriver to pry these things off. Swapping over the handlebars and the stem was pretty straightforward. No real major surprises or anything to be too concerned about. The only minor thing is that with these wider bars, that puts the levers farther out. So there's less slack on the cables, which, you kind of want a lot of slack, or at least enough that the wheel can spin around completely. That's not really the case here, but it'll be fine for now. And then, of course, my least favorite thing is trying to get the handlebars and the wheel perfectly straight. That's where my OCD side comes out, and it always takes me a while to get it just exactly how I want it. Alright, so here is the project bike as it sits now. Shorter stem is on. Wider bars are on, even though, like I said, they're not the widest in the world, but they're wider than what came off of it. Rear tire, it's actually 2.1 inch, and it fits fine. You could put a bigger tire back here for sure. Front tire's on, I could barely wedge it by. It's actually a 2.4, and check that out. So I manhandled the old tire, getting it off a little bit too rough, and put 2 big gouges in the inner tube, and tried to fix it, and it held here for about 5 minutes or so and then went flat within about 5 seconds. So I'll have to get a new inner tube, 26er Presta valve, which I don't have. That's how it sits right now. Obviously the front brake situation, the rear brake situation is going to need to be sorted out. I'm going to go to a local shop that sells used bikes and used parts and see what I can find there. Alright, so I finally got everything else that I need to get this bike finished up, and it was a little bit more than I expected, but I'm already in this far, so I might as well finish it up properly. So I went to Recycles Richmond to grab the parts that I needed, and obviously I needed to get the new rear brake, which I have back here, and the lever and the cable and all that good stuff. Needed a new inner tube, that's in. The other thing that I wanted to ask him about is when I took the front wheel off, took the QR skewer down, basically everything kind of just came apart, like the races on the bearings and everything, and I didn't really know what was going on with that. And as soon as the guy looked at it, he was like, "Oh, you've got a broken axle," and that's exactly what it was. So instead of trying to repair the axle, he actually sold me a used wheel for a pretty reasonable price, complete with hub and axle and everything. And this is a giant wheel, so it came off of some sort of giant bike. Added little bonus is that it's a little bit wider than the original one, and the original one, you had to pull this brake lever pretty far to get the pads to touch the rim. So now that this is wider, they touch sooner, so that's definitely a nice thing to have. So I just went with a cable actuated rear brake on this. Initially it would have had a hydraulic rear brake, but the cable should be fine, for a budget bike like this. And it actually kind of worked out because I was able to run the outer cable through where the hydraulic cable would have gone, and then obviously just run, the inner cable through there. Setting up the rear brake actually took quite a while because I'd never done it before, but once I figured out what the adjustment screws did and how they worked, it was pretty straightforward and easy to set up. Quick little tip on cutting the cables. So it'd be ideal if you had a specific cable cutter for these thick bike style cables. But if you don't, you can still use a basic cable cutter. My hand's covering up half of this right now. But really what you do is you just wrap a little bit of tape. I used masking tape around the area that you're going to cut. Basically cut right in the middle of that tape. And the tape keeps the cable from fraying too much. Then you can get that little end piece on, without too much struggle. Then of course for that little end piece, I don't even know what it's called. I'm putting it on right now. There's like a little crimping tool made specifically for that. There's so many little like bike specific tools that you can get by with other things. So I just use some needle nose pliers. Then I come back with the cable cutter and, don't press all the way down, but just put a couple lines in it and that'll hold it on nice and secure. Alright, so this rear brake is set up, working pretty well. Never done one of these V-brake, cantilever brakes, whatever they're called, but pretty simple to set up. So that's going to about do it for this bike. So of course, if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, and then you can see when the next video comes up when this bad boy is actually out on the trails. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.